welcome to Soul GPS, where we learn to take our lives back in our hands after narcissistic abuse. I wanted to talk to you guys today about a specific tactic that manipulative people like narcissists, sociopaths, and so on use to control other people and wield their power over them. And this is something I'm sure many of you have heard before. It's a pretty popular saying, especially in the corporate culture, in politics as well. Of course, it's systematic. Again, what happens in a small environment always radiates out into the larger environment and vice versa. It's a typical human control dynamic, and that is one called divide and conquer. So I wanted to talk to you about this a little bit today, and specifically to break it down into several stages that I was able to discern based on what has happened to me, based on what has happened to other people whose stories I have heard, and also a bunch of literature that I was exposed to on the subject. And so what I did is I distilled it into 3 stages, into 3 steps. And what you will notice as I go through it is that this divide and conquer splintering occurs inside. It occurs on the inside of a person first before it begins to manifest itself in the outside dynamic as well. So the first level of the internal splitting that the narcissist does is when they begin to incite doubt within you after you're spending some time with them. And this can happen by them saying things like, for example, you express an opinion about something that you felt pretty strongly about, and after they've spent some time with you, now you feel like you can trust them. So trust is really important to have built at this stage, at least some level of it. And then they will say things like, well, I don't know, I don't quite agree with you. Have you looked at it this way? Or they're basically going to start to oppose your viewpoint to make you kind of go like, well, maybe I'm wrong about this. Or you express a feeling about a family member that you have been struggling with, for example, and what you're trying to do is create more intimacy. You're looking to have more bonding with the person, because that's how we bond, that's how we become intimate, is we talk about deep things. We open ourselves up about feelings and certain ideas that we normally maybe wouldn't talk to a person that we just met at a coffee shop, right? So we go deeper and deeper. And the idea with intimacy, especially when it's healthy intimacy, is that with the person really being there for you and listening to you and listening to what you have to say, they're going to, through the process of questioning and through the process of their relentless inquisitiveness, allow you to also explore parts within yourself that maybe you haven't discovered before. And so then you can create these healthy bonding moments, and ideally you want that person to really be there for you, be there with you and hold your hand. And, as you come upon an epiphany, they're as happy as you are and they're as relieved as you are because you share empathy together. Well, with a narcissist, you don't share empathy together. I mean, you feel empathic towards them. They don't feel the same towards you. Here come the bells. I'm going to pause the video because they're going to get loud. So what I want to say is that this form of doubt is quite insidious, that they incite with their commentary and just with their overall attitude, where you try to open up and share your perspective, share your opinion about something, and then they are just going to be like, well, and it's not a healthy kind of disagreement, because it is really important to, be able to be in a partnership where you don't always agree on everything. I mean, that's the more diversity of opinion, especially when it's backed up by logical arguments, is a healthy thing to have in general. But in this case, it's like your intuition kind of begins to pick up that this kind of feels like there's an underlying current of an agenda that they have, and they truly do, because the idea with this, especially if it's something that's not extremely material, when it's something that but it's important to you, such as, for instance, you're cooking a dinner, or you just bought an outfit for yourself that you would like to show off and say, you know, get a form of approval from them, and you want to ask their opinion, what they think. You know, so there are these healthy boundaries where, you know, we may say things like, well, you know, maybe this color, it would be better for you than that one. But there's always this sense of wanting to improve things and wanting to be there for one another. There's that mechanism, that dynamic. Well, in this case, it is an obvious way to put a wedge between you and whatever it is that you feel good about, or whatever it is that you have grown accustomed to, not so much to, in a healthy way, explore another point of view, but rather to make you doubt yourself and make you distrust yourself. So the first level of splintering that occurs in a narcissistic relationship is when you have put trust in someone, and then what they do is they use that against you. So they take something as you're coming at them, and they're going to turn it around and give you back a version of it that is skewed, a version of it that carries negative intent with it. And this often happens in families. It often happens in narcissistic, with narcissistic parents. Especially when a child is really vulnerable, they want to ask a parent about this or that, and they come in order to get approval and acknowledgement. This is really the root of it. You know, we need love, we need acknowledgement, and we need approval when we're young in order to create a very healthy sense of self-compassion, such as, yeah, sweetheart, you're right. You feel, you really, you know, you look at it the right way. You know, I really admire how you have approached this problem, you know, especially when you focus on the process for a child and guide them through something, through a process of self-discovery. And then they also have that sense of protection, which should come from the father figure, where, you know, the father can step in and say something to the child along the way of, well, you know, you have a right to your own opinion, and learn to stand up for yourself and defend yourself. You know, you don't always have to agree with other people. So it's self-compassion and self-protection, the two pillars of good upbringing, I think, a healthy upbringing, which if we have, and if we go into the world with that and expose ourselves to people, and if we feel like somebody is in some ways sabotaging that, we can clearly feel that things are off. Whereas if we didn't have that to begin with, which is, I think, the case with most people, it's really easy to put ourselves in a situation with, especially with people of the opposite sex, where we want to share with them and be vulnerable with them, because we all seek connection and intimacy, and it's a very healthy thing. It's part of our human experience, and I think it's one of the best parts of a human experience. But when we do that and really put ourselves out there, and that person begins to take advantage of it in one way or another, and they're compromising that sense of self-compassion and self-protection that has been built on shaky foundation, we will not notice it as much than we would have had we had those two pillars built. I hope that makes sense. So doubt is usually the first stage, and it's really dangerous, because when it happens is that, and if we put our trust into the other person, if we put it in their hands, and they will give us back an opposing view of what we had held before on purpose, which is a tactic that they have perfected to a T. It's a way to kind of shake you up in your foundations, to shake your stability that you have within yourself, and continue to put your trust in them and keep asking them for their opinion. And then before you know it, especially if you are really high on the codependency scale, before you know it, what's going to happen is You're going to ask them about almost everything. You know, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I just met this friend. What do you think? I just wrote this email. Can you read it? Can you take a look at it? Or, you know, what do you want for dinner? What do you think about this? Right? So when you start to ask that to the point where it gets a little bit out of balance, then you might be able to sort of catch yourself and see, wait a minute, am I putting too much of my own trust and of my own sense of self into the hands of another, which is also where that loss of self often begins to take root in the relationship. So we've given ourselves, not just in a sense that we love that person completely and when they disappear, the dreams, the whole future vision turns into ash, but also because we have made our own self-esteem dependent on that toxic person who then usurped it and hijacked it and threw it in the garbage, essentially, systematically over time. That is really damaging to the self. So if you find yourself doing that, you have that tendency, really take notice, ask yourself why you might be doing this, and perhaps you'll be able to trace that back to your childhood. It often is the case. So self-doubt. So they put a wedge between you and you, between you, the person who's here present in the moment, who's having an experience, and the you that's watching, observing, intuiting, slipping in subconscious or very subtle whispers into your ear that tell you, you know, maybe this is not correct. Maybe what you think, maybe your opinion is more valuable than the opinion of your partner because it's your opinion to begin with. Maybe it's not important to get an approval from this person. Maybe the fact that you have your own approval of yourself is sufficient. So they're going to drive that wedge in between those two. The person that you are in the moment experiencing and the person that you think you are and the person that is supporting you, if that makes sense. I know it's a little bit abstract territory we're getting in, but one of the points of inner cohesion and feeling that sense of self as a whole being is to have those two parts of ourselves agree and be in alignment. So you are the one who approves of yourself. This is where the whole idea of negative versus positive self-talk also comes in, and we could be talking about it for a while, but that would be another really long video. I should just make a separate one about this, but you can see clearly how being your own self-champion, being a person who supports herself or himself unconditionally, regardless of the opinion of other, the more you have that capability, the less swayed you will be and the less seduced you'll be in the early stages of your relationship with the narcissist or exposure to the narcissist. So this is the whole idea of whether you have a weaker sense of self or a stronger sense of self. So doubt is the first one. So they set you against you, and that is kind of like the first stage of cognitive dissonance. Now you're second guessing yourself. You know, am I doing this right? Am I thinking about this right? You know, maybe I'm wrong about this or that, blah, blah, blah. And then you start thinking more like the narcissist wants you to think. Stage 2 of divide and conquer is the bond. And it may sound innocuous and it may sound positive, but what happens when you bond with a toxic person, with a narcissist, is that there's this dynamic that settles in, which is the us against the world dynamic, that's been called. And the closer you become with them, the more you agree with them, the more you're on their side, the more they're able to pull you in and suck you in, the more the old you stops being as pronounced, and your identity begins to fade, and the less you're able to identify and relate to other people. So that's the stage of isolation, where they isolate you and they want you to just be with them all the time and listen to their stories all the time. And if you're not available, oh my God, and it's the end of the world. Like, how dare you not be there for me? Where, of course, if you want them to be there for you, they have other more important things to do, which is also, again, yet part of that doubt that they put. Like, okay, what kind of message does that send? That sends a message that you're not worthy of their attention, of their time. You know, it's a neglect. It's a form of neglect, which again, many of us put up with that because we've been used to this when we were children. I personally have had that experience with one of my parents. Just it's as if like I wasn't there. Like I was there or I wasn't there. It didn't really matter. You know, it didn't make a difference. So if I'm used to that and it seems quote unquote normal to me, and then it happens to me in a relationship, even though it's going to hurt and feel uncomfortable, there's something in the back of my mind that says, well, it's always been like this. So it's just, you know, maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. And now if the self-doubt is there as a foundation already present, then it's that much easier to push you over to that next level, over that next ledge, and of this bonding isolation mechanism, where the way you bond is by you being there for them, but they're not so much there for you, if that makes sense. So us against the world, this is another level of cognitive dissonance, because now you're starting to feel, I remember how it was for me, like I was starting to feel like there was a glass divider between me and the world. It just seemed like a movie. Whereas when I was with him, it seemed real and tangible. But when I was in the world, it was like there was a divider between me and the world. Like I was becoming a different person. And inevitably, I think what was happening is I was really taking on a lot of the thoughts, a lot of the points of view and the mentality of my partner. And which was part of the exhaustion that was settling in, is that my mind, my own personality was trying to reconcile and make excuses for the wrongdoings of him, because now I was already also kind of getting on his side and supporting him. So, you know, I could not think of it in terms of like they're wrong, because that would make me also be on the wrong side, right? Because now I'm supporting a toxic mentality. I'm taking it on. So I had to make my own excuses, like, well, but they're not wrong. They have been hurt, you know, they have a right to think this way. And maybe I should learn to be more accepting. And so the empathy really kicks in that stage, and creating this sense of like that person is so essential to me. So then when the time will come to let go of that, it is like trying to separate, I don't know, like you have spaghetti dish with one black noodles and one white noodles. I'm not sorry, it's just an analogy that came to me in a moment. And you mix them all together, right, into this one meal. And then the separation comes, and like you're gonna have to untangle and take all this apart. And it's like, it's so hard, because there are all these new neural pathways in the brain that have been formed that sort of took in the image of who that person was, accepted that, put that image in your own brain, and then you had to take your own sense of self and somehow intermingle that with them, and that just created like this third entity inside of your mind. And that's why it's so much better and easier to just like slay the dragon, let it all go, once you leave that relationship and start from the beginning. Also because the foundation that you brought in to the relationship was likely built on some shaky foundations, which is an unhealthy sense or inadequate sense of self-protection and inadequate sense of self-compassion, which had made you accept the situation or had gone as far as you did. Now, in some cases, there's such insidious, incredibly intelligent, covert narcissists out there that even the most intelligent person you know, who really should know better, should in quotation marks, will get seduced into. It really is not a mark of your intelligence, whether you've been with that person or not. They're just so good at it. They're such tactical people. We don't think the same way that they do. They constantly scheme and plan. Things like, okay, if I do this, how are they most likely to respond? Maybe I should say this and see. So they constantly are checking and adjusting their thing, to their game, to create this simulacra of reality that makes you feel comfortable and not question things too much, but at the same time allows them to get their agenda to be met, if that makes sense. So stage 3 of this divide and conquer strategy is fear. And at this point, you're so bonded, like your noodles, they're so intertwined. Forgive the humor, but that's just the first thing I could think of. Are so intertwined with each other that the idea of separating, it just seems so devastating and so almost impossible that you wouldn't even know where to begin. And this could also include not just the mental integration with the person, but also material, right? You share a home together, you have kids together, you've been together for 23 years, you know, you share all of these things, there's all of this sharing, all of this overlapping. And to pull all that apart is just extremely difficult. And on top of that, if they have really done a good job in stage 1, which is to incite really deep doubt within you, then it's going to be that much easier for them to continue the myth of making you believe that you just cannot do it without them. You cannot make it without them. You absolutely need them in order to survive and sustain yourself. So you feel like separating and going on your own is just out of the question. It's like, how are you going to do this? It just seems too overwhelming. So it's not true. Let me just tell you, it's not true. You can do just fine on your own. It's a step-by-step process that just requires planning and good strategy and approach. And it seems really hard because of all the mental dissonance and hijacking and the emotional manipulation and all that you just probably feeling really tired and exhausted, and you just kind of don't know where to start. But in some ways, I think planning an exit becomes a really healthy way of diverting your attention from all of this emotional muck that can just pull us down into an abyss and make us kind of stay up here in the surface, engage our cognitive faculties and our linear thinking, our analytical thinking, which comes super handy in recovery, and start to plan your exit. So the message that I have for you in this video that I want to really get across is that this tactic is insidious, and this tactic preys upon something that I have alluded to in my previous video, which is on the narcissist's new supply, loneliness, and the inner schism. It preys upon this inner schism, which so many of us carry within since we were kids. And that comes from being divided through the parenting, through the parents not giving us enough approval, not giving us enough guidance. You know, it's like, okay, I think I'm ready for a rant here, but bear with me. How does a child that's like 3 years old supposed to know how to properly function in the world and know everything? It's like there's so many parents out there who I've seen and been around who just presume that a little kid knows what to do and how to, you know, behave in certain situations, and they just should know. There's no like coaching that's been provided there by the mother and the father, which they both need to do, each one in a different stage. The mother is more about the, you know, the nurturing, the early bonding. The first few years is about really instilling a healthy sense of self within the child, Whereas the father is all about, okay, you know, preparing the child to going off into the world and showing the world. I mean, I'm talking about it and I'm kind of like thinking, oh shit, I wish I had that kind of an experience myself when I was a kid. I didn't, unfortunately, but I made up for it with my own self-healing and my own self-work, and I keep doing that on a daily basis through the inner child work that I do. So, but how are children supposed to know? You know, this is what parents are there for, is to teach the children. It's like birds, you know. A bird doesn't know how to fly. In the initial stages, when a bird is tiny, the mother and the father are feeding the birds, bringing in the worms, and then eventually they're going to teach the kids how to fly. And then when they're ready to fly, they're gonna kind of kick them out and say, okay, now go, and you're ready. Now you're ready. Now you have gotten enough training that it should allow you to create your own life. And in human relations, everything seems to be so skewed and backwards. You know, it's like you either have the parent who just completely doesn't care and presumes that the kid is supposed to know everything the moment they pop out of the womb, or and they neglect, or they're holding on so much to their children. You know, especially it's the mother who's just super smothering, and it's a lot of the borderline mothers do that, and they just won't let go. They just will never allow their child to individuate and have their own happy life. They just have to be there and always meddle in their life and always feel like they're the part of it, because their own identity is vested in the child, and the child is expected to behave in a certain way. Otherwise, they are not going to get the love and approval, which is super superficial. And it's basically, we're talking about crumbs, where the exchange dynamic is super uneven, because the child ends up giving the parent more than the parent has ever given to the child. So anyway, so this is what I wanted to convey to you today, is this favorite, I find, tactic of the narcissist. I don't know if they're aware of this, that they do this, but it's what systems do. It's what they do at many different levels. I think it's the reason why our humanity is in the shape that it's in, bad shape that it's in. It's because we're split inside, and people who are manipulative, who live parasitic lives, know how to exploit that inner split to their own advantage and actually drive the wedge even deeper. So first they split you between you deeper, further, so that you're doubting yourself, you're doubting your own point of view, your own opinion, which you're entitled to, and you know, you've worked since childhood. You have been building your sense of identity and perspective. It's good to have an opinion, nothing wrong with it, and it's good for others to have their own. And that's just how we learn, is we share different perspectives, and this way we build a very rich context and through our interactions with each other. It's a great thing, but they just can't. Narcissists just cannot accept that somebody could disagree with them. I mean, like, how dare you, you know, think your own way, especially if it contradicts with their opinion of the world, of other people, or anything else. So they're gonna have to just force you to come on their side, otherwise you'll be their enemy. And since you want to be loved and have a relationship, you're going to eventually relent and go along with their agenda. That's how they indoctrinate you slowly into their way of being. So self-doubt is stage 1. Stage 2 is the bonding, in which they bring you closer and closer to themselves, as they're driving now a wedge between you and your friends, you and your community, to isolate you so that they can continue doing their antics and manipulations on you in the dark, away from anybody else's view. Because if somebody else saw it, they could tell, hey, I don't think this is right, what this person is doing, or you're changing, Christy, or hey, John, I think you have a different way about you. Like, what's happening? You seem really tired, and you seem, you know, like just like the life force has been sucked out of you. You know, it happens, and they know that that's going to happen sooner or later. So they want to pull you away from your friends, and also say things about your friends and the people you trust that are negative, in order for you to not trust them, you know, so this isolation goes both ways. It's a physical isolation as well as mental and emotional isolation. And then finally the fear, you know, that's the highest level of cognitive dissonance and divide and conquer, where you feel so divided inside, you feel so unstable, and so much of you is vested into this other person, and that you just cannot imagine a life without them. That's an extreme. You know, some people don't get there, and that's great if you don't, but many of us do. And part of it, of course, is the future faking. Part of it is not wanting to let go of the dream, and part of it is just that we feel like how empty our world would be without these people in our lives, no matter how toxic they were. Because that's exactly what's going to happen initially, is when this whole ball of wax has to melt and die, which is the image we have had of the narcissist that we have intermingled with our own identity, so that the two identities forming this whole new third type of entity that we get vested in. When that dies, it leaves such a deep void within us that when we then go out and look at the world freshly post a narcissistically abusive relationship, and we look out at the world, we see nothing. Nothing makes us happy. Colors fade, sounds mute. There's nothing. Because what we see on the outside is a mirror projection of what we have within, which is why, as you heal and continue to reconstruct your identity now on firm foundations, not on the shaky foundations that you have inherited from home, which were a legacy, transgenerational legacy of abuse, but now you're doing it yourself, you're setting yourself right. And then you go into the world as a new person, which you still have it's not like you're losing everything. You're still going to be in touch with your preferences. They actually might become even more pronounced, because now you don't have somebody else kind of getting in the way and trying to sway you in their direction and telling you that what you thought you liked was actually like you shouldn't like that, and blah, 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 blah. So it creates all this confusion. I think that many people who are undecided, they can't decide about things, are victims of narcissistic abuse. I don't know if all of you would agree with that, but I've been there, and I've known a lot of people who are this way, and they just can't decide because they have so many voices inside their head battling for, like, okay, maybe I should go left, or maybe I should go right, maybe I should do this and that, and they end up not taking any action. They get frozen in time because they just don't know what's right or wrong, and that's because they don't have a healthy sense of self really driving them forward like an arrow. You know, there's just too much chaos inside. So as you heal and as you regain that sense of self, you will move through life also faster, and you will be able to hone in on your target much easier, whatever it is that you want, and also knowing what you want. It's a great time to really self-reflect and ask yourself, what is it that you want, so that you are able to actually give your life a sense of purpose and a sense of direction. It's an really instrumental part of self-healing. From this, and really the blessing, it's really the gift, because many of us don't really go there and don't really think about it before the abuse, before this happens, because everything kind of happens in this in between level, this, as I call it, kind of like a lukewarm stage of, you know, things are not super bad, but they're also not super good. They're kind of in between. Not enough motivation to really work on yourself, but also not enough satisfaction and sense of happiness and joy to really relax and enjoy this life experience. So self-healing after narcissistic abuse allows you to get to that place of feeling relaxed and really joyful and and become a whole person that is built on really strong foundations. Okay, I think I have said everything that I wanted to say here in this film. This healing journey does make you more self-aware. It makes you also aware of what's happening on the outside, that there is evil in the world. There are horrible people out there who are preying on others' goodness and goodwill. So know this, continue to educate yourself, study this subject. The more you know, the more you're able to say no. And I wish you just that, a lot of self-awareness, great intuitive connection with yourself in order to allow your inner compass to guide you forward towards your highest purpose. I'm sending sending you lots of love from Croatia, and I look forward to catching up with you in another video. Oh, actually, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. I have been getting some emails from you guys about email coaching and so on, and also have been getting deposits. And just make sure that when you do send me a deposit via PayPal, I'm going to change that soon. My website is almost finished. It might take another week or two. So things are going to be moving a little bit more smoother when it comes to bookings. But in the meantime, if you do send me a deposit, you can follow up with an email right away with your question, asking specifically what it is that you need help with, explaining your situation, and letting me know where you need guidance for email support. So yeah, just feel free to right away, once the deposit is in, just go ahead and send in your question. You don't have to wait for me to reach out back to you. Just do it directly right away. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Again, I wish you all the best, and I look forward to catching up with you in the comments. Take care. Bye.